Right guys, we're on the next operation now, which is just taking the excess material off here to get rid of the groove that's in the middle. So I'm sort of just milling it down flat. What I've done is looked at another of my old fly cutters. It's not been cleaned up, this one. I've cleaned the shank up where it goes in the collet, but I've not cleaned the actual cutter up itself, the body. It's not ideal because it's single point cutting, and it because this is a geared head machine, you can hear some slack in the gears a little bit, so I'm taking fairly light cuts to get where I need to go, but it's doing the job. So I'll show you a bit of that, and I'm going to get all four to the same standard where I've taken that down to the right thickness and just remove that slot that's in the middle there. So I'll bring you back in a moment when I'm doing some of that. So we just touch off. So you get the idea. I'll bring you back when we've got all four to that standard, and then we'll do the final operation. Well, final main operation, which is finishing the heel to the right height, and then the rest of it's cosmetic, really, just some chamfers. So I'll bring you back when we get to that bit. Right guys, we're at the next operation now. So I'm just putting chamfers on the front of the clamp, where that's going to locate into the vice groove. So I've got two done, I've got two left to do. I'll just show you the setup for those. So what I'm doing is I'm just cleaning down a little bit, make sure there's no swarf kicking around in the vice. And the way I'm doing these, and it's not ideal, but it's for what I'm doing, it's fine. So this is something I made as an apprentice many years ago, and it never got finished off, and I showed it in my toolbox tour, and it was a 30 or 60 degree setting piece, and also obviously a 90 degree setting piece. It's been ground on that edge and on this edge, so I know that's 90 degrees, well it certainly was 30 years ago. On this edge it's a rough bandsawn edge at roughly 30 degrees, and it's never been ground to finish it off. I'm only using the bottom section of this, and I know it's rough sawn, but it's it's an approximate 30 degree angle, which is I get the same, it's repeatable every time I use it, so I'm getting the same the same angle setting on every one of the clamps, so it's fine for what I'm doing. So basically I'm doing that in two separate setups. It's a little bit fiddly setting it up. I'm basically dropping in the setting piece into the vise. I'm sitting the clamp up against it, making sure it's, excuse my head, making sure it's properly seated on that 30-degree piece, and then I'm just holding that tight with my hand. This is where you need about 3 pairs of hands. I'm sticking a spare clamp in the other side, just so that the vise clamps evenly, and then just clamping up like that. And what I'm doing is, when I'm cutting this corner, I'm cutting sort of right to left, so that all the cutting force is going into the fixed jaw at the back, and when I flip it round and do the other corner, obviously it will be butted up against the moving jaw, and I'm cutting left to right in that instance, so that I'm putting the cutting forces again into the jaw, so I'm not trying to put the cutting forces away from where the part's supported. So I'll just get my glasses and we'll do this one. Touch it off. I'm doing this in 1mm depth of cut. That's it. That's the first corner done. So I'm using a 12mm solid carbide end mill, and I'm running at 960 revs a minute. I could be going faster with this, but again, like I said, until I've stripped the head down, I'm just trying to go a little bit easy on the machine. Again, this is where you need 3 hands. So that's the first side done. I'm just going to deburr that one off camera, and then I'll bring you back and we'll set it up to do the other corner. So basically I'm going 7.5mm deep, and I'm just counting that on the fine feed that I've got on the quill. I've got a bezel on there with the graduations on, so I'm just winding down in 1mm depth of cut until I've gone 7.5mm deep. So that's it. I've just deburred that one. So that's ready to go in. Have the second side done. So we'll just set that up again. Same thing, but just on the opposite side. Quick clean up. And this time we're going to be sitting the flat face against the moving jaw. Just close this face up a little bit so it's easier, less distance to travel. Sit that down against it. And this time I'm going to cut in the opposite direction. There we go guys, that's another one done. So what I will do is I'll machine the last one that's in this end at the minute to the same standard. I'll do that off camera, get the idea. And then what we'll be doing is, once we've done that, the next operation then is I'm going to put another chamfer, a very very small angle, probably 5 degrees, something like that, on this on this edge here, where I'll bevel this off down, so we come back to the same point across there, and we just bevel that down. Not really necessary, you know, this is the right thickness to fit in the groove as it is at the minute, but I'm going to be staring at these things for a long time when they're on the mill, so I want them to look nice. So it's more cosmetic than anything else. But I'll bring you back when we're setting that up. Right guys, we're back. We're just setting up for the next operation. Now what I want to do is just, you'll see I've put one of the clamps in the vise there, and I've eyesighted from the transition point of the angles that I've just milled on. I've eyesighted that to the top of the vise, and I've eyesighted across how much material I actually want to remove on that chamfer. So it's just purely eyesight. So what I need to do now is I want to make a little setting block at the right angle to go underneath all of these, so that I can mill them all to the same angle. So what I've done is I've set that in there like that. I've put some parallels in the bottom of the vise, and I've measured this end, the distance from the parallel to the underneath side of the clamp at the very extreme, and then at the other side, obviously I can't get the vernier in to do that, so this side's 13.6 millimeters. At the other side, what I've done is a good old set of dividers, inside dividers, and I've just measured from the parallel till that just goes, you know, just finds its way under the front edge of the clamp, because obviously it's a wedge shape, so it won't go any further. And I'm just going to measure that now, hopefully on camera. And I've just got a feel there, so 18.92, so I'm going to call that 19 millimeters at that end. So 13.6 one end, 19 millimeters the other end, so I'm just going to write those two numbers down. And now what I need to do is measure the length of the clamp itself. We'll just get with a vernier. That's 45.5 millimeters. So I'm going to write that down as well. So that's 45.5. So over 45.5, what I could do now is trig all this out and do it all properly, but there's really no need. I'm just going to make a setting block that's 45.5 millimeters long, or thereabouts, and has got the delta between 13.6 and 19 mil across its full length, across that 45 length. I'm just going to make that out of a lump of aluminium or mild steel. I'm just going to have a root around in the scrap box and see what we've got. Once I've machined that to the right angle, then I'm going to set all of the clamps up one after another in the vise on that setting block, and then we should get a consistent chamfer on the front edge of all 4 clamps. So I'll bring you back when we're doing that. Right, so I found a bit of aluminium guys and just chopped that off with a hacksaw. 45.54, so 40 microns out with a hacksaw. That's not bad, is it? Near enough for what I'm doing. So what I'm going to do now is just set that up in the vise. This has already got a taper on anyway. It was actually an arm off a set of comparator gauges, I think, with a clock on it many years ago that was being thrown away. So I just salvaged the aluminium pieces. So what I'm going to do now is set that on a vise. I'm going to calculate the delta between one end and the other, which I think is 5.4 millimeters, and I'm just going to set one end of this up, cut one end of this up by 5.4 millimeters, just using the vernier off a parallel, and then we'll just machine a flat across the top, and then that will give me the right wedge angle that I need to set all of the clamps up. So I'll bring you back when I'm doing that. Right, we're just going to set this up, guys. So I've put some parallels in the vise, some thin ones, same set of inside dividers. They're set to 5.4mm. So I'm just going to drop the stock in. This is where you need 3 pairs of hands again. I'm just basically going to drop the bar down right at the very end. Right at the very end of the bar. Just check it. Yep. So that's now set with a 5.4mm differential between one end and the other. So we're just going to machine that down to that angle. Nice to machine something other than tool steel. So we'll just check that with the vernier. We should have a 5.4mm difference roughly between one end and the other. Just give it a quick check if I've got everything right. 13.5. So we're looking for 18. We're looking for 19mm this end roughly. 18.89. Yeah, you know, 18.9. It's within 3 or 4 thou of where it needs to be, which for what I'm doing, that's absolutely fine. So we'll just give that a quick deburr, and then I'll bring you back when I've got the first clamp set up using that little jig that I've just made at that angle, and we'll machine the first clamp. Right guys, I've repositioned the camera. I've got a couple of parallels, the wedge shaped block that I've just made. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to favour the front jaw of the vise slightly. So I'm going to put the parallels in there. I'm going to have to drop the heel of the vise behind the parallels, and then we're just going to slide the wedge shaped piece underneath. We need about 4 hands here, as you can see. Try again. I think that's there. And then I'm going to have to feel the vice jaws closed a bit like you do on a lathe when you're gripping round bar. Just check that. Looks about right. So what we'll do now is we'll just put a small cut on there and just see if that's even all the way across. This is only a cosmetic chamfer I'm putting on, so it doesn't matter too much, but I would like it to transition evenly across the clamp. So we'll just give that a quick cut and see what we get. There we go. So I made a note of roughly what the distance I travelled down was, but you can see there the chamfer breaks out evenly with where the edges of the chamfers are on each side, so that's good, and it is level across the clamp. So deburr on all those edges now and cut the other three to the same standard. Then the next job, there's two more operations to do. The first one, I don't know which order I'm going to do these in, to be honest, but probably the heel. So I need to then make the heel the right distance so that the clamps will sit in just the right place in the slot on the vise. So that'll be one of the ops, probably the first one I'll do. And the second job I need to do then is open the slot out for 12mm studding, which is what I've got on the mill. And then at that point all four will be done. Quick fettle up, and I've ordered some black oxide solution, and I'm going to blacken these all off so that they look hopefully like somebody cared when they made them. So that's the plan. So I'll do the rest off camera, and then I'll bring you back when we're doing the next operation, which will be the heel. Right guys, we're at the next operation now, which is taking the excess material off these faces. So I've got two set up in the vise ready to go, and what I've done is I've measured the distance from the slot in the side of the vise down to the table, which is 12.5mm. I've measured the delta between this top face and this face, which on all the clamps is 16mm, which means to get back to my 12.5 to the clamping face, I need to remove 3.5mm off the heels of the clamps for all of them. So I'll set up and do these ones now, and I'll bring you back when we're cutting. Right guys, we're just on the next setup now for the slot in the middle to bring that out to 12mm, or well 13mm I'm going to make it, so 1/2 mil side clearance. So what I've done, I've brought the end mill down, which is a 12mm end mill, and just with a 1/1000 feeler I've just touched off this front edge, and this is where a DRO would be fantastic, but I don't have one, so I have to use the old method. So I've touched on with a 1/1000 feeler, and incidentally I found these in my attic. They were obviously left there by the previous owner, and I gave them a clean up the other night. They're in reasonable condition. So it's a Chesterman set from Sheffield in England, and they're imperial, but the strange thing is, and I've never seen it on a set of feeler gauges before, it's got a 4-inch rule in there as well. So as well as the set of feelers, there's actually a 4-inch rule in the set, which is I thought that was quite a nice touch. So I gave those a clean up the other night, so I've got another set of feeler gauges to the other sets that I've already got, so they're going to be handy. So as I say, I've touched off there. I've just got a feel with a 1/1000 feeler. So what I'm going to do now is set a 0 on the axis, which I know you can't see, but I've just done. And then I need to wind across, so the thickness of the block is 44.85. I've written that on the top of the vise there. So I need to go half the cutter as well, which is a 12mm cutter, so that's an extra 6mm. So we're going to wind in 6mm for a start. So and that's that's 2.5 per rev. I'm still learning this machine, so apologies. So that's 5, 7.5, 10, 12.5, 15, 17.5, 20. So I'm on a 22.4 will get me to half the block, plus 6 is 28.4. So I'm at 20 there, so another 2.5, 5, that's 25, and I want 28.25, so 25, another 2.5 is 27.5, 28, 28.25, so that should be me bang on centre there now. And what I'm going to do is just bring the head back down and just eyeball that. It certainly looks to be on centre, so no silly mistakes made. The only thing I've not accounted for there is the 1/1000 feeler, but for what this is, it's a clamp slot in the middle of a clamp. I'm not going to get bent out of shape over a 1/1000, so what I'll do is I'll set that as a 0, and that's 0 with the table coming towards me, and I need to bear that in mind because obviously I've got backlash in the y-axis, so all my moves need to take that into account. So that's one way, and then the other way, basically I'm going to slot down in until I just touch on one end. I'll set a 0, and then I'm going to wind to the other end, see what the reading is, and I'll write that on the top of the vise, and those are the 2 readings that I'll work to on the X. And then I'm going to plunge down through the clamp, open it out to 12mm across its length, and then I'm going to pitch across 1/2 mil one way, 1/2 mil the other way, and just open it out 1/2 mil each side. So I'll just move the camera so it's out of my way, stick it back behind the mill, and we'll get on with doing that now. one done. I don't think it was particularly happy when it got into the corners, but I kind of expected that. It is tool steel after all, and it's taking a full obviously when you get right into the corners you've got full engagement on the end mill, so it was protesting a little bit, but it's done it. And the finish actually isn't too bad. I thought it might be a bit more chattery than that, but the finish looks okay in there. So so that's one done. What I'm going to do is just check that with an M12 clamp stud and just make sure that that fits nicely. So yeah, nice bit of clearance in there. So that's fine. So I'll bring the rest of them up to the same standard and then give them a good deburr, and then the last thing really to do with these, I'll give them a last going over with a file and just make sure I've got some nice even break edges all over, and I'll not bother filming that. I'm going to deburr the slot obviously that I've just done, and then I'm sitting now waiting then for the black oxide to come, and I'll give them a chemical black ready for use. Right guys, I'm just preparing for the black chemical black or chemical blue. I think it's black oxide. That's what it's called. So that's turned up now. So what I'm doing is just giving these 4 clamps a good degrease. I've done most of it already, so it's had one go over. So I'm just going to give them a second quick rub over with some methylated spirits, just to make sure there's absolutely no grease on these whatsoever, and then they'll be ready to go in the bath of black oxide. So I'm wearing one glove just to make sure there's no grease coming off my fingers. You know, there's natural grease and oil in your skin anyway. I've never used this stuff before, but I've watched plenty of other videos of people using it, and the trick seems to be cleanliness. You know, the more attention you pay to the pre-chemical dip, the better the results that you're going to get at the end of it. So this is the thing. I'm just going to go over all 4 like this with the meths, and then I'll bring you back when we're ready to put them in the chemical. Alright then guys, we're going to give this black oxide solution a go. So the best I can understand, because there's no instructions that came with it, is that you dilute it 25%, so 4 to 1. So I've got 100 millilitres of tap water in here, so I'm going to put 25, did I say 100 litres? 100 millilitres of tap water. I'm going to put 25 millilitres of solution in. Which is about there. I've no idea how this is going to work, but we'll give it a go. I've got some more black solution there that you can actually drink that one, but I'll not do any of that while I'm doing this, of course. Right, so we've got the first clamp. We'll just drop it in there and see what happens, if anything. I've degreased the rotary forceps as well before I used them. Let's just see if we can prop this up at the back. It's definitely looks like it's going black, so we'll leave that in there for sort of 5 or 10 minutes, and I'll bring you back at that point and we'll see how successful that's been. Well, there we go guys, that's all 4 clamps done. That's taken about 10 or 15 minutes each in the solution. I'm quite pleased with those. Zoom in a little bit. So they've come out quite well. Fair bit of work's gone into them, obviously, and you've seen the machining side of it, but they're all now ready for use for the vise. So we'll leave it at that, and I'll obviously experiment a bit more with this black oxide solution at some point. But yeah, that's I think they look good. So let's finish those off nicely. So there we go, guys, that's the end of the first proper machining episode, and that's the start of the machining journey, I think, really. There will be some other episodes around what I'm doing in the workshop and things like that, and I'm probably going to wrap those up into maybe a once a month or something, and I don't know what I'm going to call it yet, but I'll do a kind of a shop update type video once a month, and then I'm going to focus in now on some machining videos, and hopefully that'll help the channel a little bit. So as I'm filming this, I am currently sitting on 198 subscribers, so very near the 200 mark, which in, what is it, 10 weeks, 11 weeks, something like that. I think that's it's pretty good going. So if you like what you're seeing, please do share it with other like-minded people, because I do enjoy the feedback and the comments, and I do try and respond to all the comments as well. So and I get some satisfaction out of that. You know, that's kind of payback, really, is people's sort of comments. So thank you to all those who subscribe. Thanks to the new subscribers who've come along, and thank you for sticking with the channel. Very much appreciated. And just before I go, a final little bit of excitement. And I'll tell you about that in a minute. A bit of an accident I've had, so I'll just tell you about that, and we'll close this episode off. So the final little thing, guys, for this episode, I don't know who's familiar with this, but this is plant food. I've got some chilli plants indoors that I'm growing, just a few, kindly given to me by a neighbour when they were seedlings, and we've got the first chillies on there now. And they were looking a bit sickly, and I thought, well, I know I've got some of this tomato plant food, so I got that out the other day. I knew it was in the garage somewhere, so I looked it out. I turned around to take it indoors, and I managed to trip up over the tripod, and I chucked the bottle on the floor, and it split open, and it went all under the Denford lathe. So I couldn't get to it to clear it all up. So this is a new bottle I've been out and bought. So yeah, that was a bit of a mishap. And anyway, so I came in the next day, ready to clean it up, and that had happened. So so that is the latest acquisition. Apologies for my sick sense of humour. That is the latest acquisition, and that turned up last weekend. So that is a Harrison M300 lathe that I've purchased. And a lot of thoughts got into that, and there are going to be some episodes specifically around this. So for those of you out there, and I know there were quite a few who were looking forward to a lathe strip down, don't worry, you're still going to get one. It's just going to be slightly bigger. And my thinking behind that was, the Denford was okay, and it's something I bought 3 or 4 years ago, before I'd really got properly set up. And it was always on the verge of being too small, and I always knew in my heart of hearts that one day I was going to buy a decent sized lathe. And I thought, the more I thought about it, after I'd done the drawbar for the mill, and I was having a few issues, I went and thought long and hard about it, and I thought, if I'm going to spend the time and effort in stripping a lathe down and completely rebuilding it and making a really good job of it, to then only realise that it's really too small and I want something bigger, I just don't see the point in me putting that amount of effort into that. It's kind of a bit of lost effort. So I've bitten the bullet, and it's I've really killed the finances now, guys, because I've gone the wrong side of the line buying this. But it was a decision to make. I want to keep the shop going, I want to keep the videos coming, I'm enjoying doing it, and I thought, well, let's take the plunge, let's just do it now at the start. I've got it then, and we can do some episodes around strip down, rebuild, repair, whatever I need to do. This is just as it's landed. So I got a guy called Steve Cox from Landy Lift who very kindly did the pickup for me and the drop off, and he was kind enough to help me get it into the shop. I have made a bit of an error, so we were looking where we were going to position it, and Steve was helping me position it and everything, and I really wasn't thinking hard enough when we positioned it, and it is slightly in the wrong position. So the first thing I'm going to do with this in probably 3 or 4 days time, maybe at the weekend, is reposition this in the right place. I've bought some steel to make some proper feet that I'm going to set underneath the jacking screws so that it's properly seated down for a start, and then we're going to start looking at the rest of the lathe. So I need cable, so I've ordered some 3-phase cable to take me up to the converter. I've had no power to it yet. I've done very little with it other than wind the handles around a little bit so far. It's a very, as second-hand machines go, it's fairly modern. I think it's late 1990s, early 2000s, something like that. I need to do a bit of digging from the serial number. I bought it from a second-hand machine dealer, so you know it wasn't an eBay purchase, but not that that makes any difference. So the guy at the dealership was quite helpful as well. So I'm not going to go into too much detail now, but it's exciting news. I'm really pleased with it. You know, as a visual, looking over it, it looks to be in fantastic condition. As with all second-hand machines, there's some apologies, and I expected that. So we'll get into that in a future episode as we start to do a thorough investigation on it. But as I say, as a visual, the bed looks really good. There's no wear, there's no damage. Everything moves fairly well as it should. There's a bit of work needed on the cross slide. There's a bit of notchiness in that, so that needs a bit of a look at. But saddle, great. It goes into all the gears okay. The bottom gearbox seems to all work okay manually, so fairly happy with that. And the guy I bought it off assured me that it, you know, when you fire it up with power, spindle runs and there's no nasty noises and things like that. So, you know, massively pleased with this. It's just going to complement the mill so well. I've got a bit more capacity now. It's a lot more solid and rigid than the Denford, and hopefully I can get stuck into some really good projects in the future on it. So that's the end of this episode, and I'll bring you back on the next one, which could be more on this, or it could be more work on the mill. Either way, and hopefully we're getting into some meaty projects now. So thanks for watching, everybody. Thanks for subscribing, and I'll catch you all on the next video.